Today, it is my honor to welcome you to the second day of our second International Congress on Agricultural Biodiversity, as we are going to explore the importance of consuming diverse diets that are nutritious, affordable, safe, and accessible to all. My name is Sethi. I'm the Africa team leader within the Food Environment and Consumer Behavior Research Program at the Alliance of Biodiversity International and SIAT. And together with my co-chairs, Lucas Pavera and Elisabetta Loputu, we managed to bring together an exciting program of speakers and moderators who will discuss the topic of the day from different angles, including research, policy, business, and last but not least, indigenous peoples' perspectives. Today's global food systems rely on an increasingly limited number of plant and animal species contributing to most of the world's calorie intakes from food. Our planet is, however, home to much more diversity in food species with untapped potential to improve quality and diversity of our diets. Day 2 will kickstart with an inspirational presentation on transforming the way food is consumed as our Eat, Grow, Save opening talk. This talk will be delivered by Simran Sethi. She is a journalist, academic, and consultant focused on food science, culture, and sustainability. She is author of the thought-provoking book with title Bread, Wine, Chocolate, The Slow Loss of Foods We Love. This is followed by a scientific symposium where renowned and emergent scientific experts will share their research insights and discuss the relationships between agrobiodiversity, traditional foods, value chains, food environments, consumer behavior, and healthy diets. The keynote speech will be delivered by Shakuntala Tilsted. She was awarded the 2021 World Food Prize, and this for her groundbreaking research, critical insights, and landmark innovations in developing holistic, nutrition-sensitive approaches to aquatic food systems. 2 roundtables will follow with selected abstract presentations and panel discussions. The afternoon will start with a session dedicated to giving voice to indigenous peoples and their allies to highlight the importance of indigenous peoples' food systems for nutrition and sustainability. The Congress pledges to protect local and indigenous food biodiversity, help people rediscover traditional diets and recipes, and encourage scientists and food companies to research value addition options for underutilized crops. Day 2 will progress with a policy and business forum with honorary chair Louise Baker. A first roundtable will discuss the barriers and opportunities for private sector and policymakers to contribute to shaping healthier food environments. The second roundtable will discuss issues around generating and sharing food composition data for neglected and underutilized species from a business and policy perspective. Throughout the day, participants will be able to ask questions via the chat in Wova, and the technical team will make sure that all questions will be visible to the moderators and panelists. Due to time limitations, the moderator will only be able to ask a few questions live. However, the discussions can continue in the chat on Wova during and after the sessions. Wova equally offers a lot of other options for opening discussion threads and/or contacting specific speakers or participants. Following some concluding remarks by the day chairs, it will then be time to enjoy a cooking show embedded as a conversation on the Mediterranean diet. And if by then you have not yet had enough, you will have a chance to choose from 2 side events, one on agrobiodiversity in a connected market, and another one on Mediterranean diets, sustainable diets for sustainable life, cultural heritage, nutritional benefits, and social well-being. It is my biggest hope that you will enjoy the rich debates and presentations. I personally have been looking much forward to today. I'm thrilled to discover new ideas as well as to distill recommendations and actions for the future from the many discussions that will happen. Let's all together, research, policy, business, extension, communities, and the public. Let's all together move the agenda on agricultural biodiversity for healthy diets and sustainable, inclusive food systems to the next level, especially also being inclusive of indigenous people's perspectives. Once more, a very warm welcome to today's Congress team on agricultural biodiversity and consumption.
invited here today to give a speech on how increasing agrobiodiversity in our diets and markets can help achieve sustainability outcomes, including increasing food security and nutrition. But you already know this. This is your life's work that I am lucky to say has become inextricably connected with my own. Nearly a decade ago, I visited Rome to do research on the Vatican and moral imperatives for and against genetic engineering. The first person I met within hours of getting off the plane was Stefano Padulosi, who was then senior scientist at Biodiversity International and was focused on neglected and underutilized species. GMOs or focus in your country is what he said to me. But what the scientific community is far more concerned with in relation to food and agriculture is the loss of agricultural biodiversity. Now, at that point, what I knew of agrobiodiversity loss was relegated to indigenous varieties of wild rice and esoteric squashes. They were foods that I knew in abstract. They weren't in an embodied sense. Foods that I wouldn't frankly miss when they were gone. Now, this wasn't because I was callous or uncaring, but rather because of a concept from behavioral economics that has become both foundation and lodestar for my work. This theory, which is known as the finite pool of worry, posits that there is only so much that we can worry about at one time. And I share this not only because it shaped my book and my subsequent reporting and teaching around agrobiodiversity, but because I want it to influence yours. In order to get people to care about the loss that we are facing, we have to do one of two things. We have to work within existing cares or displace the concerns that people already have. After meeting Stefano, scores of scientists at FAO, and Luigi Guarino and Carrie Fowler at the Crop Trust, I knew I had to change the focus of my work. So I did something audacious. I sold my house, I gave away my car, I quit my tenured post at the university, and I embarked on a journey across 5 continents to tell the stories of the loss of genetic biodiversity, to tell the stories of genetic erosion and efforts in situ and ex situ to conserve our crop and diversity and biodiversity loss. This included, of course, the preservation of crop wild relatives in wheat, grapes, cacao, coffee, and yeast, or as the average reader understood it, bread, wine, coffee, chocolate, and beer. My selection was deliberate, and it's because of what those behavioral economists taught me, and also because of something else that I want to share with you, which was an awareness of my audience. I knew that the people who would read my book were those who were in the global north, where the book would be published, and the readers who would have the funds to purchase the book. So I knew that I simply couldn't share information, but that I wanted to share information in a way that would engage, right? And I wanted to give people the tools to enact and engage with what they learned. So I knew that the celebration of diversity that I wanted to share would be enhanced by tasting guides that would help someone who had ever only tried a supermarket candy bar or an overly sugary, overly milked coffee make sense of how biodiversity wasn't only something that we could see and experience in the abstract, but something that was present on their plate. I call this, and please forgive my distortion of the term, in vivo conservation. We save agrobiodiversity seed by seed, crop by crop, and meal by meal by savoring it. The changes we will explore, I wrote in the introduction to my book, are a reflection of what's happening to all foods and drinks. Not only of the crops that I include, right? And that includes wheat, what scientists and nutritionists would call a dietary staple, but ones that we cherish for other reasons. Staples like rice, corn, and wheat make up over 2/3 of the world's diet. But they aren't what get me out of bed in the morning or help me celebrate at night. If you've ever raised a glass for a toast or woken up to Folgers in your cup, I wrote, you know how meaningful so-called non-staples can be. They're the stuff of life and love. celebrated, debated, and imbued with far more than calories. For the Chinese, tea drives the day, not coffee. For Peruvians, potatoes are both a nutritional and a soul staple. Rwandans grow bananas for beer as well as breakfast. Hindus revere cows for milk, not meat. Our menus are different, but our needs, ones that include and transcend nutrition, are universal. If we're lucky enough to have any choice in what we're able to eat, to be able to eat at all, then we should honor this privilege by eating less of the bad and more of the good, celebrating the fact that the solutions to the loss of agricultural biodiversity aren't difficult, they're delicious. I go on to write, food connects us to all living things and to the lineage of who we are and where we come from. It isn't farmers in fields and workers in factory who bring us our food. It's people like us. People who dedicate their lives to creating something that we take into our bodies. They transform nature into culture as what they touch becomes part of us. This intimacy is astonishing and humbling. Although we treat our food system as an abstract thing, it's a dynamic entity made up of these relationships, ones that I have come to fully appreciate through the journeys on these pages. I have learned by traveling to the places where some of our favorite foods and drinks begin that these foods are precious. I had no idea how hard it was to get a coffee bean from a forest in Ethiopia to my local cafe, or how much work and care went into making a premium bar of chocolate or a hearty loaf of bread. I had no idea how endangered the best, most delicious versions of these things are. The awareness is what makes them precious, and meal by meal makes my life better. By helping you more deeply understand foods that are already a part of your life and develop a sensory map for exploring new ones, this book will enable you to discover and appreciate flavors you may not have experienced. And it will give you the tools to define your own deliciousness and reach for more. That's been this journey's greatest reward. Finding a new appreciation for what I already loved, and understanding what it takes to sustain and save that love in farms, on our plates, and in life, lies in the recognition that how we eat is a reflection of how we live. By sustaining agricultural biodiversity, we sustain ourselves. I'll stop there with the book. But I shared that because I'm a journalist, a writer, and a communications scholar. While we have different paths to exploring agricultural biodiversity, we share the same objective: to slow this dramatic loss in microbes, plants, animals, and aquatic life. I don't have to share statistics with you or tell you that we are at code red with the dual crises of climate change and agrobiodiversity loss. But what I can offer, as someone who spends her days figuring out how to reach people, that this is an alert of a different kind, that we must involve more people in the fight to stem biodiversity loss before it's too late. Those born between 1997 and 2012 are known collectively as Gen Z, and they are perhaps our largest audience. The world's largest population cohort, 2.5 billion strong. People who have grown up in a globalized, digitized, interconnected world, who understand the limitations of both politics and capitalism. They know that the problems we face around climate change and beyond will not be solved by those who have a vested interest in maintaining them. I want to pause here because I completely transformed this speech as I have been participating in from afar the climate talks that are going on in Glasgow. I know what I'm about to share is a bit controversial, but because I'm aware that governments and industry help fund the work around sustaining biodiversity, and they know that they need to be partners at the table. I was a lead author of the climate policy in my former municipality, and I have a graduate degree in business. I recognize the power of these institutions, and I also recognize their limitations. We cannot pretend that these institutions have not been complicit and encouraging of systems of agriculture that result in the loss of agricultural biodiversity. Deforestation and land use changes, in part due to industrialized agriculture, are some of the bigger drivers of change in agrobiodiversity. How do we address this? How do we ensure that the work that we both want to engage in is not an act of one step forward, two steps back? I can't answer this for you, but what I can do is honor the complexity and invite you to consider how you can address this directly. Now, this dance, this one step forward, two steps back, is compromising the ability of people to eat now and in the future. And we have to find a better way. I believe this new way requires not only the expansion of science, but one of courage and an acknowledgement of both grief and gratitude. The majority of the work that I do now is directly related to sharing what you do, to honoring and celebrating the work that you do, but also to recognizing the squishy, non-sciencey things that I, as an outsider and an eater, an unapologetic eater, have an opportunity to embrace. I don't dwell in the world of acronyms. I recognize that the stories that I have to tell have to reach people where they are. I recognize that by embracing grief, that I can also address this crisis. So I choose to speak openly and honestly about how I'm learning to acknowledge all that we're losing, without losing sight of the world that I know we want to build. I invite you to consider, as you progress through the Congress, what it would mean for you to do the same. No country is self-sufficient when it comes to the genetic resources required for sustenance. You know this because you taught me this. We need each other, and we feed each other. And in that awareness, we find what Swedish psychology researcher Maria Ohala recently described to me as defiant hope. It's the idea that we understand our challenges and know what's at stake. But rather than allowing them to flatten us or push us into a state of hopelessness or a place of anger, we let the obstacles become fodder for the fire of action. I tell stories of agrobiodiversity loss through food, not to trivialize your work or make the concept superficial, but because I want to entrench it. I want people to know with every bite of food that they eat, that they are helping to shape our food system. Because I know through the work that I have done that behavior change is not driven by data and science alone. Change is driven by story. Narratives are how we make meaning and how we change behavior. Conversation is how we are inspired to act. I know that from the conversation that I had with Stefano. And I know that from the conversations I have had with scientists since. When writing my book, I interviewed an oceanographer named Sylvia Earle. And in a moment of despair, I turned to her and I asked, what is it that we can do to help solve these what feel like insurmountable problems? And she responded to my question with another question. She said, if this isn't what we want, what do we choose? we still have the ability to transform the system and heal ourselves. We have proven that we are really good at destroying things. Can we also demonstrate our ability to care, nurture, and restore? So this is what I leave you with today. The question of what it will take to sustain not only the loss, but to celebrate what we can save. Thank you for your extraordinary work, and best wishes for the remainder of the Congress.